Welcome to the Korea Society. So the Korean Cookbook is the definitive culinary guide that captures the true essence of Hansik for readers around the world. Published by Phaidon, it is co-authored by our guest tonight, the acclaimed chef Junghyun Park. You can clap. Together with Jungyoon Choi, herself a globally renowned expert on Korean food, Chef JP, as he is known to many, presents an expansive and scholarly exploration of Korean cooking and the most comprehensive collection of Korean recipes in print today. Chef JP was born and raised in Seoul. With his wife Elia Park, they run 4 restaurants in New York: Attaboy, Narrow, Seoul Salon, and Mix, which has received 2 Michelin stars and 3 stars from the New York Times. In 2022, Mix received the Art of Hospitality Award from the world's 50 best restaurants, and in 2023, it achieved number 8 in World 50 Best, which makes it the top restaurant in North America on that list. In 2023, Chef JP also won the James Beard Award for Best Chef, New York State. Joining him on the stage tonight is Elise Inamine, a writer whose writings has appeared in New York Times, Food and Wine magazine, among many others, and former restaurant editor at Bon Appetit. You'll have a chance to ask Chef JP your own questions later this hour. If you're joining us for the live webcast, please send your questions via email, artsandculture@koreasociety.org. And the signed copies of the Korean Cookbook is available for sale here tonight, thanks to the Phaidon team. Grab a copy before they're gone. Of course, the Korean Cookbook is available wherever books are sold. And now, please join me in welcoming Chef Junghyun Park and Elise Inamine.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm excited to unpack this encyclopedic book with you, Chef JP. So let's get started.
Yes.
So first, I was wondering about the origin of the cookbook. What made you decide to focus on Hansik as opposed to your restaurants?
As a professional chef, of course, I've been known as a chef of the restaurant Attaboy and Mix and Naru, and also the Seoul Salon as well. So, but at the same time, my restaurant is like very personal story. So it's like about my personal palate and also my personal skill. So with that, I like growing up with my So I've been born and raised in Korea, and as you guys can imagine, I've been like eating some Korean food all the time when I was young, and I moved to New York about 10 years ago. So I probably could writing down about my restaurant cookbook, but at the same time, for me, I think the like bring some about the Hansik, the Korean food, is very important at this point. So I just want to writing down about not about myself, it's about more about Korean cuisine is more important timing for us. So that's the reason I'm thinking about making the Korean cookbook.
Right. And we've talked about this before, but I thought this would be an interesting story to share with the group is your connection to Korean cuisine and Hansik in particular and how you got into cooking. And so I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about your relationship with Korean cuisine.
My parents is both working as a professional. So sometime after school, when I was like 13, 14 years old, like after school, I just, need to be sometimes cook myself for the dinner. And then I have one older brother. He's like 3 years older than me. And he always asks me, oh, can you make the ramen for me? Can you make, like, so I'm kind of being very comfortable being the kitchen, even when I was young. So I'm kind of enjoying playing around with the food. And like when I was 15 years old, I just called mom and just like, oh, mom, I want to be chef. And then she thought it's kind of joke, But so I just enrolled some Korean cooking school. And I got some certification about Korean food when I was 15 years old. So I'm kind of like try to learn about Korean food through that time. So about 25 years now. So, but still, like there are so many things to learn. So always kind of discovering, especially while I'm writing down this kind of book, I'm learn so much. through the process.
Yeah, and it's interesting also to think about like the focus on home cooking coming from you as a chef, and also Jungyoon Choi also as a chef. What made you decide to shine a light on home cooks and home cooking as opposed to chefs that are famous or TikTok creators? Why was this an important focus for you?
I mean, maybe this cookbook is about the Hansik, which is a Korean food. So as everyone know, the food is like it's about the people. It's like I want to writing down the book about what Korean people is actually eating and now,
Mm.
and then there is how related about their lifestyle as well. So I want to be like not really professional book, but like designed for the professional chef. Is
Mm.
sometimes they are looking for some specific recipe about some like really tip or something very technique driven. But
Mm.
this is more kind of general story about Korean people. So I
Mm.
want to bring some more about home cookbook, like people who really like getting to know about the Korean food. So that is more kind of first step to the people to want to know about that. Yeah.
Mm. And I was also curious because I mean, you've all seen, and hopefully you're getting a copy of the book. It's enormous, and it's encyclopedic in a sense. And I was curious about, like, can you share more about the process of putting it together, collaborating with your co-author, how you decided to organize it? Because it is very intentional, and it's interesting to see kind of how the cookbook journeys with you as a cook.
So the co-author of this cookbook is Jungyoon Choi. So I know Jungyoon Choi almost like 20 years. When I was in college student, I met her first time, and then she already in the like working in the restaurant in the hotel, and then we've been talking about like food scene and the dining, a lot of things. We share some idea from the time. So my friendship with Jungyoon Choi has been almost 20 years. So we kind of
Mm.
strong bonding about know each other well. And so she's based in Korea, and she's been like researching about Korean food for a long time. So as I'm the professional chef, I might be more kind of skill driven or more about like recipe, but she know about more history and
Mm.
also about like about the people. So I think it's really important to having someone who know about the history and more kind of traditional compared to me. So we kind of really working well together. And also one like hard part for us is like how to framework of this cookbook was taking really like a lot of the time with it. So we spent almost like first year to like we doing some everyday, I mean every weekly meeting. So each Monday, so based in the New York time, like early in the morning, and Korea is like really late night of the
Yeah.
Korea. So we meeting every single Monday. We talk about how we can frame this cookbook. Like some like mainly most of cookbook is like designed for like cold appetizer, like fish dish, soup, or main
Mhm.
dish, and like dessert. But Korean food is like foundationally is made with the pap and banchan culture. So we want to bring that kind of culture. So that is a story about how Korean people eating with it.
Mm.
So we kind of try to figuring out what best index of the each dish, and also how we can delivering our culture in a good way. So we spend that frame is like taking about years. So that is more
Oh,
time
wow.
actually. Yeah, like individual recipe also like taking time to writing down to testing it and researching it, but at the same time actually how we can writing down as a like individual chapter is most taking more time. Yeah.
Mm. That's really interesting in terms of like having to think about organizing the book in a way that makes sense, like to this is how a Korean meal is
Mm.
set and centering rice at it.
Yeah. So I mean, like if you see the like Korean, like especially like meal at the home, we always having like bowl of the rice and bowl of the soup and different banchan on the table. So that is like how I grew up with, and now also a lot of Korean people actually eating that way.
Mm.
So we want to bring that kind of culture to
Mm.
on this cookbook. Like maybe if you really focus about the recipe only, maybe people just following the one recipe, but they don't know how they enjoy with it. So we want to delivery like the how Korean people really enjoying the meal with a friend and family all together as a like one table.
Yeah, and I love that even before you get into all of the recipes, there's a section at the beginning of the book that's explaining that exactly in terms of like, here is how you eat all of the dishes that you're about to learn how to make, essentially.
Yeah. So we want to like talk about how they can enjoy it first. So like even the maybe BB like kind of Korean BBQ is very well known, but surprisingly Korean BBQ is not only about the meat. Maybe many people focus about the meat themselves, but we always serving with like different banchan and sam and 된장찌개 and bowl of the rice. So we actually on the table, meat is in the middle, but except that meat, it's a lot of part is like vegetable. So like Korean people is like the meat, eating the meat, but at the same time they cannot meat only. We always meat
Yeah.
eating the meat with the bowl of the rice and the vegetable with it. So we want to bring that kind of story of the behind the scene. So like I don't want to like focus about how to making perfect barbecue, you know.
Right. And I was wondering, I think one of the things that's interesting for me as like a person who follows chefs and cooks a lot of recipes is coming up with a recipe is very difficult. And I think in this case, especially for the recipes that you worked on, required so much research and talking to people and testing. And I was curious if you could explain like how you got to one recipe in particular and the work and research and development that went on to get to that final recipe.
So how we did process with the Jungyoon Choi is we made a chapter, and then we decide which kind of dish need to be in each chapter. So we kind of writing down the name of the dish, can be like 30 different dish, and we kind of researching individual recipe. So as I mentioned, this is not my personal like recipe. It's about Korean people. So we pull out the like old traditional cookbook, or I'm like researching on the YouTube. I'm just like have a look at different cookbook based on the Korea. Maybe like sometime the one recipe is combined 30 different recipe.
Oh,
So I
wow.
just
Okay.
have like all different recipe, and then I try to find out what is kind of moderate one, you know. So try to find out that one, and also the testing that, and then try to find out most like basic simple recipe to making this cookbook. So I mean, some people say like, you know, like for example, I can say 된장국 or maybe the miyeokguk, you know, that is very like typical type of the soup serving in Korea, but everyone has like different recipe. So I personally prefer like the miyeokguk is braising long time and based on the beef stock. But some of my friends they prefer having the muscle base, and some of my friends they're like prefer not long braising, just like very short cooking, so having they can feel the actual like crunchiness of the miyeok flavor. So I mean, it is like all different personal kind of preference. I think the based on their like the memory with their grandma's cook or their mother's cook. So it is like very personal story. So I don't want to say, oh, this is the best recipe. You know, this is just like kind of very generous and moderate kind of recipe people can easily following up with.
Almost like the recipes that are here are an entryway into understanding the dish, and then they can kind of learn about other regional or family versions on their own.
Yeah, so I mean, even the 된장국 is there might be more than 100 type of 된장국 is can be just, you know. So this is basically start from the anchovy stock, but some people prefer to having like different type of the stock base, and some people prefer to having like little bit of the gochujang in there, or some people like to having some gochugaru in there, and some people using the like brisket to making the with, and some people like the having fish in there. So it's like totally different type of it, but this is just like one simple things.
What would you say like was one of the harder chapters for you to develop from this, or maybe cause like the most like conversation and kind of back and forth with your co-author?
I mean, probably I can say the 나물 chapter, because that chapter is actually the first chapter we're writing down.
Oh, so it's kind of
So
like
it's a
trying to
kind of
figure
we
out what
try
it's
to
going to be.
find out how we can like, you know, writing down. So I think the 나물 chapter, like first time when I writing down the recipe, even the each one's head note is like really long.
Yeah.
So we need to be took it down a lot because I was like really, you know, passionate
wanna
about
pack.
it. So I want to like writing down all the like the information that I want to bring to this cookbook. And then, but if you're writing the cookbook at that way, it should be
It'll be
like double the size of it, so it might be really hard to carrying. So we decide like trimmed it out a little bit, and also way to writing down is like we kind of trimmed out through our experience. Also, same time, reason why we focus about the namu a lot is so Korean food is very much is like vegetable driven.
right.
Yeah. On like generally the Korean table is about 30% is animal protein and 70% is vegetable. So Korean people like having like really good balance about the protein and then vegetable kind of culture. So we wanna bring that kind of subtle and vegetable flavor into our cookbook through. So that's the reason we writing down the namu chapter first. And then we do a lot of the conversation with my co-author Jungyoon Choi about how we can write it down well.
And one of the things that I appreciate about the book is you both talk about food as evolving. And one of the things that I was wondering is like, how did you aim to balance like being in terms of like on a range, like in between like capital A, like authenticity, but also like trendy? Like, how did you find balance to find like this is the Korean food that we want to represent in this book?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, the food is like really related about the people and involving with, about their culture truly. So Hansik has been developed through like few thousand of the history of the Korea themselves. So through that kind of process, actually I've been learning so much and then try to find out the connection with me, myself, and also traditional, and also through my recipe. And as you mentioned, like authentic is really hard to describe.
Right.
I think for me, this recipe can be authentic, but some people can say, "Oh, this is not authentic recipe." Because even for example, like now every people know Korea use a lot of the chili powder, gochugaru, but actually gochugaru has been importing to Korea maybe like 500 years ago. So compared to 5,000 of the history, it's only like last 10% has a gochugaru. And even the onion in this recipe, probably almost every single recipe has onion here. But actually, the onion has been imported to Korea only 100 years ago.
Yeah, I remember when you told me that at Authentic one
So
time.
even my grandma and grandparents, they might be not used to using the onion on their food. And maybe it can be the tteokbokki. I've been eating growing up with tteokbokki, but my grandma is probably tasted the first tteokbokki when she was 70, something like that. So really hard to say what is the authentic comes from. So, but I want to delivering the food we actually current Korean people eating at now in Korea. I want to bring that kind of recipe to here. So in this cookbook, it has a fried chicken, and this cookbook has like 된장찌개, and this cookbook has a kimchi and different type of the rice as well, which is like what Korean people now they are enjoying it most, and then they're like liked it. So that is the through this cookbook comes out.
Yeah. And I found it really interesting, like we were talking right before this, how like I thought it was cool that there's a recipe for LA style kalbi, which is something that is from Korean American immigrants in Los Angeles, and like how that became like its own dish, but was also highlighted here. And I was curious also, like, because you've mentioned this before, like what were some of the things that you learned that were surprising to you about Hansik as you were working on this cookbook?
I mean, even this cookbook has a curry rice, because when I was in school, if you go to any school, like kind of school camp, like they always serving the curry. So I'm kind of growing up with the curry culture. And then really hard to say curry is not Korean food anymore, Like we're using curry powder for different way to marinate the meat, and sometimes making the galbi base with a little bit of the curry, making enhance the flavor with it. So even though like maybe as you mentioned, like we have a lot of different like culture as now involving in Korea now. So I'm very excited to see what's going to be next Korean food is going to be growing up with it. So I think the really important to having this kind of good example of the foundation currently what people eating and now as a cookbook. So it might be good kind of start to talking about what's going to be next feature of the Korean as well.
And one of the things I also wanted to make sure we talked about was the last part of the book, which feels like an entirely different book almost. Like it's very like magazine-y. There's like photo, like kind of these like big lush photos. It's the Master Artisan section. Why was that important for you to include in this book?
I mean the like because I've been mentioned about this cookbook is very like general Korean food. It's including 350 recipe and mostly very easy to following up and can be in 30 minutes. And some of the dishes like less than 5 ingredients, so very like home cooked driven. But at the same time, I want to give you some depths of the Korean cuisine in the book. So I want to bring some idea with the JY. So why don't you get some recipe from some of the like people who's been working for the Korean food a long time for their generation and generation. So for example, the Kisundo, so she is like the chang maker. So she's making the doenjang, gochujang, and 간장 for her life. And actually that we call the 장고지, which is like kind of farm who making the chang. So their farm is like 350 years old. So their family has been making the chang for almost like 10 generation. So I want to featuring that kind of person, like some people actually in Korea to making better Korean food for their life. So I want to bring that kind of story into this cookbook. It's definitely it's going to be meaningful for us as well. And also same time, I want to give some more kind of depth of the culture through this cookbook.
Yeah, and like how did you become familiar with her? Because I think that's a really interesting story. Also, you'll see there's a photo of a woman with a bunch of jung. It's the only photo of a human in this slideshow. So that's her when it comes up.
So I mean, I first time visit her like the Changoji. It was 2000, I think like 8 years ago. So after I'm not, I think 7 years ago. So after opening the Aroboy, so I already planned about opening the Aromix. So I want to see more about like different like culture and want to meet like a lot of the artisan people in Korea. So I visit Korea and I visit her like the Changoji, and I taste the the 간장 soy sauce. Like we call the siganjang, which is like kind of mother like soy sauce that was aged 140 years old.
Whoa.
So it's almost like kind of jammy, because of the like texture wise, like all the water has been evaporated, so almost like
It's like almost like a balsamic.
Balsamic kind of texture, but it has really depth in the flavor. And so I realized I want to bring this kind of culture to New York. Of course, we can find out the 간장 in H Mart, even the Amazon, like find out very easily. But at the same time, I want to bring some this kind of depth of the Korean cuisine to the New York dining scene. So that's how I kind of more into about the Korean food. So meeting with this kind of people is like always learning and like inspiration for me.
That's really cool. Oh, there she is.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. So actually, she visiting New York about last week. So she came to one of our restaurant, the Naro, and then she did a class for the all the line cook of our restaurant. So she like brings some her like the 간장, and then our line cook in Naro is some of them comes from the CIA right away. They comes from like different country, so they don't know about like Korean food well, but they really want to learn about that. So having that kind of food section with the team, with the like Kisundo means a lot. And then it was definitely like learning experience.
Yeah, I was following her visit on a lot of people's Instagrams because I was like, oh, dang, this is so cool. But one of the things that we were talking about too is like, how she has like a strawberry gochujang, which was interesting to see. Like, like there's that connection to like, here's like tradition, but also innovation is coming from the same person and family.
Yeah, I mean, their family is like, definitely they keep the tradition, but at the same time, they want to be like learning through the other culture and people always. So they're like making the strawberry gochujang. This sounds like weird, but it actually tastes really good. So they're always like developing and trying in different way. And I'm always like happy to bring some people to their family house and then like eating together. And just I'm usually like share about my experience in New York, and they always like talk about that. And so yeah, it's very happy to be there. Always.
Yeah, that's so cool. And one thing I was thinking about, like with home cooking, is a lot of times these dishes or recipes, and I think all of us can point to parents and grandparents who do this, where the recipe or the idea is like just stuck in someone's head and it's never written down, or it like preserved in any way, really. Like you kind of have to talk somebody through it, or they have to talk you through it essentially. And also, it's interesting to see how like even those recipes evolve over time as like you continue to talk to the people who created those recipes. And so I was curious with this book, like what made you want to publish and like in a sense like put down onto paper these dishes and recipes as they stand now today?
Uh, I mean, I also talked with Jungyoon Choi about, so uh, as everyone know, like there's so many people keep talking about Korean culture now. It's not only about the Korean food, it can be about TV show and the movie and the music as well. So Korean food is like getting also being popular. So I think we kind of having some common sense about, oh, it's definitely time to we need to writing down this kind of cookbook to introduce about Korean cuisine in a good way. So we kind of developed the idea, and then we uh, both like totally believe about like during the writing down the recipe, and also through my idea, and also through the like lot of the different cookbook that I've been researching about it, and also searching on the like YouTube, seeing the menu and the website as well, and making the one recipe and then actually following on my hand, and then making at home, and that is like kind of also a lot of the learning process. So I was very happy to now I can make this cookbook because as a professional chef, I'm usually like working in the professional restaurant, so that is like more kind of technique driven, like some technique maybe people really hard to following with,
Right.
but to making more kind of this kind of home cook, and maybe this cook is maybe dish I want to making for my family and my friends, so it was really meaningful. Yeah.
And what do you hope readers and home cooks take away from buying this book, cooking through it, reading through it?
I mean, we really wish this is a kind of entry of the know about Korean cuisine and Korean people. So of course it has contained a lot of the recipe in here, but also same time, like each recipe had note including also the like other history part and also the artisan part. There's a lot of the story about the people of the Korean. So like how the ingredients start importing, how the dishes have made it, and how they developed this kind of recipe together. It was more about the story of us. So hopefully through this cookbook, not only about find out one best recipe, they want to. I wish this cookbook is made them to travel to Korea one day. So they might be really good. Yeah.
And I was wondering, like, how has the book changed over time since, like, first idea was to, focus on Hansik to what it is today? Like, how did the cookbook evolve over time, the idea for it, if at all?
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time, I mentioned like I've been cooking almost like over 20 years as a professional. But at the same time, while I'm writing this cookbook, I realized, oh, I I don't know many things about Korean food yet. So I'm kind of more try to involving about Korean culture. I want to more know about the Korean food. So this year I've been traveling Korea 4 times because I want to meet different artisan. I want to learn more about Korean recipe, and like some of the technique is, especially some of the technique comes from the master. They're like usually like 70, like 80 years old, so they looking for someone to learn their technique. So I'm very happy to be there, like learning something. That kind of technique is very meaningful to generation to generation,
Right.
like moving forward. So that is I really got while I'm writing down this cookbook. Oh, the cookbook, the Korean food is so much, it's so big, so huge. So I'm still very small. So I want to learn so many things. I think that kind of idea is like I learned through this kind of cookbook writing process.
Cool. Well, I think that's all the questions for me currently. We wanted to open it up to Q&A for anyone who has a question for Chef JP. Jay has a microphone, so I guess raise your hand if you have a burning question.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you talk a little bit about the art direction for the book? I noticed a lot of the photographs are very minimalist. So, did you how you work with the Phaidon team? And I'm very curious about how you came across this cover because I think most cookbooks that you see in the bookstores have a very prominent photograph, and this is very different from that. So, I'd love to hear about your kind of art direction experience.
So I mean, the Python press has been known as making the art book. So they're having very specific, also very strong like art direction with it, and also based on the picture. So this picture is took by the photographer name is Jinju Kang. So she is based in Korea. So we thought like we cannot take the picture in US because some of the ingredient is really hard to find out here. So and also we want to take the like see more our like the image of the Korea through the Korean photographer. So we recommend that Korean photographer, the Phaidon team, and then Phaidon team had to look at all the portfolio, and they was also very happy with it. So we kind of working like really well together, but also all this kind of beautiful image of the cookbook, like kind of the Korea photo the font and also the name with it is all like the direction comes from the Phaidon. So they're like kind of having some very strict kind of art direction with it. So we always like talk each other, but it comes out really beautifully. Yeah.
One of the questions from the online viewer is, what do you think is the biggest misconception about Korean food, and how would you like to correct it?
I mean, really hard to say misconception because like each part is very important. For example, like a lot of people say Korean food is very spicy and garlicky and strong flavor, but I don't want to say that it is wrong. That also a very big part of Korean cuisine now. But also I want to bring Korean food can be very like vegetable driven, very like subtle flavor. Like if you go some of the part of Korea, they're having like 20 different banchan comes out, mostly the banchan. So when they're eating that is you cannot feel any spicy or you cannot feel any like pungent flavor. Mostly very subtle and beautifully done. So that is also the other part of Korean cuisine. So I don't want to say like misconceptual, but it is very important to develop the each way.
Uh, I have a question regarding what is the main source of protein? Because historically it was more expensive, so the people start to combine, like in Russia, they make pierogi, something filling meat inside, or pelmeni, or dumpling here. So there's some meat and mostly like dough, which is not so expensive. So what is a major source of protein in Korea? And second question I have regarding, it's like French proverb of joke. If you want to make ragu from a rabbit, you have at least to have a cat. This is, you I understand this is a special dogs or special type of, but what is this dishes from dog? Because people know that, or it's a misconception, but on the market it really exists in China and Korea. What is your information about this?
The Korea is mainly almost like 70% of the peninsula has been the mountain region. So like long times ago, really, I mean, of course, people travel each other, but like each region to region is sometimes really hard to travel. So even the really, I mean, 70% is the mountain region, so really hard to having a lot of the different like kind of animal into consume as a like protein source. So like long time ago, usually they're having like making the soup is most easy to consume like protein. So one piece of the cow can butchering and they're using making the soup can feeding maybe 300 people with it. Like if you're using as a BBQ, it might be only for the 10 people. But after making the soup, is you can feeding more people. So I think that also region like the Korean food, there's a lot of different type of the soup based on the meat base with it. And also we using a lot of different type of the proteins, can be chicken, can be beef, and can be pork. And that's three is mostly commonly using it now. And also Korea has like peninsula country, so we also sourcing a lot of different type of the seafood. So seafood is also a very important kind of source for the as a protein to Korean like kind of dietary.
Given climate change and the movement to think global and act local, how do you maintain the authenticity of your Korean ingredients when given the need to buy local?
So I mean Korea immigration in U.S. market is been almost getting like second generation, third generation. So for example, in New Jersey, there are some several farms owned by the Korean people. They're actually growing the catnip, they're growing the 대파, they're growing the Korean pepper, they're growing the 배추 and 무. So it's originally seed comes from Korea, but they're actually localizing in US market. So even when you go to the H Mart, you can see the chame, you can see the 무, but actually that's all usually comes from the US market, not importing from Korea. So we can say that is the localizing. So I think as our food culture has been growing and kind of mature, I think that also in US market also as their take on about Korean food. So and you mentioned about like I mean, Korean food is very much, as I mentioned, 70% of the table is filled with vegetables. So it's very like sustainability, like driven cuisine, I can say.
Hi. Many Korean dishes have become very popular in New York, especially.
Yeah.
So Korean chicken, Korean hot dogs, and even like recently, hwachae became quite viral and kind of hit U.S. consciousness. What Korean dish would you wish becomes more popular in the West? That is currently
Yeah. I mean, how to say? I've never thought about which particular dish is going to be which popular in U.S. market, but I think it's very like organic way. So even myself, when I developing the recipe or the menu in our restaurant, I don't really targeting like this dish is going to be killer, you know. I'm always just like the making everything's like ready to go and always like listen from the audience who actually consume the dish. So of course the fried chicken and hot dog or that kind of things may be more kind of more TikTok friendly, you know, so they can see as a visual looks like more stunning. But in my personal opinion, I want to like having more kind of namu kind of culture is very important for me, myself. Yeah.
Another question from an online viewer is that chefs are notorious for not cooking at home. And they were just wondering, do you cook at home? And when you do you cook Korean food? And if you do, what do you like to cook the most?
So like we running full restaurant now, so which means I mostly spend my time at the restaurant. So even I don't have a specific day off. I'm usually like being
Floating
there.
around.
Yeah. So also we always having some we call the family meal. So like all the people who working with the restaurant, we cook together and we share the meal together. So I usually eat some family meal for my daytime. But if you have chance to cook at home, of course I love to cook Korean food, especially when I inviting some of my friends to home. I love to cook Korean food a lot. But my refrigerator, when you open, you can only see beer and you know the water, and that's it. You know, like yeah, my pantry is like very clean. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much for writing this cookbook, because my mom would have us forage in the woods, and we did a lot of collecting vegetables and making banchan, but there's a lot of cookbooks that like cover that. So this was very exciting for me to see so much of the namu. So just want to say thank you, because it really connects me back with my mother.
Thank
So
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you again for making the time. And today, we've talked a lot about the cookbook, which I don't want to take the spotlight away from. And as you mentioned, you have 4 restaurants to run, so I'm sure you're quite busy. But do you have any other like new projects on the horizon? You know, like at this point, I feel like even from like 5 years ago when I moved to New York, like Korean cuisine has really become the centerpiece of like New York cuisine. Do you think like the work is done here? Like what's kind of the next thing for you?
Yeah, New York, even after opening the Aroboy, it's almost 7 years now.
Yeah.
But even at that time, like if you want to having Korean food in Manhattan, you should go K-Town. You know, you cannot find out like many Korean restaurant other region. But now you can find out the Korean food restaurant in Brooklyn and Tribeca and Midtown, like everywhere. So also like a lot of the young like Korean like modern Korean food restaurant has been like open, and they got the Michelin star, and they got a really nice review from the New York Times too. So it's kind of booming about the Korean food scene, so which is great. And also I'm kind of being kind of legacy about the movement too. So especially I mentioned about during the writing this cookbook, I want to know about more Korean cuisine. So I'm kind of thinking about maybe I'm trying to travel Korea more to learn about different technique and different ingredient, and also story I can tell to the audience as well. So that is kind of my journey, I guess, for next few years. And I'm not sure about like maybe more opening of the restaurant, maybe more cookbook, but this usually organically comes out. So we'll see. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. If not, I'll go to the online viewers question. What is your favorite Korean food that you cannot live without?
Oh, okay. I mean, I'm good Korea open, and the first stop I usually go is the naengmyeon. So, I mean, I think the naengmyeon is getting popular in New York as well. So, including some of the restaurants, they are making the naengmyeon, but I'm still kind of like can be ureok or like different type of naengmyeon place in Korea. They're making really stunning naengmyeon. So that is always I'm kind of missing it, So when I have a chance to go to Korea, I always have naengmyeon. So I think that is the food I always feel like the home, feel like being Korea. So maybe I can say naengmyeon. Yeah.
And then I'll close out our time with one last question. So in the book, I really liked this sentence. It's the best way to understand a nation's food culture is to observe the humble, common dishes that appear on the tables of home kitchens and to venture into the bustling markets to see its ingredients in street food. And I was wondering, how did working on this cookbook influence you as a chef?
I mean, this cookbook is make me feel like, I need to go back to kind of basic, like thinking about my mom's made for me or my grandma used to be making for me. That is kind of a dish because, that dish is make me, I want to be the chef, So I want like kind of getting into about that idea. So I'm trying to researching more about a little bit more, the dish. I've been missing it. So yeah, that make me growing up more.
Well, thank you, JP, for taking time to talk about your incredible new book. Thank you all for joining us in person and online. And I think that you can continue to buy books, I think. But otherwise, I feel like we're done. And you can also say hi to JP.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.